She came to work every morning before sunrise, cleaned every room, cooked every meal, never complained, never asked for more than she was given. And the family she worked for treated her like she was invisible. But what nobody in that house knew, what nobody could have predicted, was that the quiet girl scrubbing their floors was about to set in motion a chain of events that would destroy everything they had spent years carefully building, and she would not even see it coming herself. Before this story is over, someone is going to lose everything. Someone is going to gain everything they never asked for. And one secret hidden inside that house is going to surface at the worst possible moment for the people who buried it. Stay with us, because the first thing that happens in this story is not what you think it is. It was Victoria James, 24 years old, quiet, determined, the kind of woman who carries heavy things without letting anyone see the weight. Her mother, Ruth, had been sick for nearly 8 months. The hospital bills were arriving faster than Victoria could open them, and the savings account she had spent 2 years building had been reduced to almost nothing. She had applied to every job listing she could find. The agency called her on a Tuesday morning. A live and housekeeping position, large private home, good pay, immediate start. Victoria said yes before the woman on the phone finished her sentence. "Mama, I got the job," she said that evening, sitting on the edge of her mother's hospital bed, holding both of her hands. "Once they start paying me, I am going to take care of everything. You are going to be fine. God will bless you, my daughter," Ruth said. Victoria believed her. The house belonged to the Harrington family. Margaret Harrington answered the door herself, well-dressed, silver hair perfectly in place, the practiced smile of someone who had spent decades maintaining appearances. She looked Victoria over once. Quickly, the way people look at things. They are deciding whether to keep breakfast by 7 every morning. The house kept spotless at all times. "My son likes his coffee early and does not like being disturbed unnecessarily." "Yes, ma'am," Victoria said to each instruction. What Victoria did not know standing on that doorstep, what she had absolutely no way of knowing, was that this house already had a plan for her, and it had nothing to do with housekeeping. What was waiting for Victoria inside that house was something no job listing could have warned her about. And in 3 weeks, everything was going to change. Stay with us. 3 weeks passed. Victoria learned the rhythms of the house, the way you learn any place you spend enough time in, the sounds it makes in the morning, the way the light moves through the kitchen windows in the afternoon, which floorboards creak and which ones do not. She learned that Margaret liked her tea with exactly 1 spoon of honey and no milk, that the housekeeper before her had lasted for months, that Connor Harrington came home late most nights and sat alone in the study for an hour before going to bed. She showed up every morning before sunrise. She worked without complaint. She sent every dollar she could spare back to her mother, and she told herself that this was enough. She told herself she was not noticing the way Connor Harrington sometimes paused in the doorway of whatever room she was working in. She told herself it did not matter. She was wrong on both counts, because someone else had already noticed, and that someone was already deciding what to do about it. The woman who was about to walk through the front door of that house was going to change everything, and Victoria was not going to see her coming. Her name was Amber Cole. She arrived on a Saturday afternoon, wearing the easy confidence of someone who had never once been made to feel like they did not belong somewhere. She walked past Victoria in the foyer without acknowledging her existence. "Who is she?" Amber asked Margaret, tilting her head in Victoria's direction. "She is the new house help." Amber looked at Victoria, the way people look at furniture they are not sure they want to keep. "What are you still standing there for? You can go." Connor had come downstairs in time to hear it. "That was rude, Amber," he said quietly. "She is only the help, Connor. I do not see why it matters how I speak to her. Every person deserves respect," he said, regardless of their position. He went back upstairs. Amber stared after him. Margaret said nothing, and Victoria, standing very still in the doorway, said quietly, "I am sorry if I caused any trouble, ma'am." But here is what nobody in that room said out loud. Connor Harrington had never once defended a member of staff in front of Amber before. Not once. In 2 years. And Amber Cole, who noticed everything, had just noticed that what Amber did next would not happen immediately. She was too careful for that. She was going to wait. And when she moved, she was going to make absolutely sure that Victoria never recovered from it. Connor began to notice her. Not in the way people notice things they want to take advantage of. In the way people notice things that are honest when most of what surrounds them is performance. He noticed that she hummed quietly while she worked. He noticed she always had his coffee ready when he came downstairs. Without being asked, he noticed that she looked tired in the evenings, in a way that had a specific worry behind it. "You seem like something is troubling you," he said one evening, finding her at the kitchen sink after dinner. Victoria set down the dish she was washing. "I am fine, sir. I do not want any trouble." "I am not trying to cause you trouble," Connor said. "I am just asking." She looked at him for a moment, measuring something she could not quite name. "My mother is sick," she said quietly. "I am trying to save enough for her surgery." Connor was quiet for a moment. "You should have told me," he said. "You do not have to carry that alone." Victoria looked at him, and something shifted between them in that kitchen that neither one of them was ready to name. But someone on the other side of the house had already given it a name, and she was already on the phone. Margaret Harrington had spent 30 years protecting what belonged to her family, and she was not about to stop now. What she and Amber were planning was so calculated, so cold that Victoria would not even feel it happening until it was already done. Stay with us, because what comes next is the part of this story that will make your stomach drop. 2 days later, Connor drove Victoria to the hospital himself. He spoke with the doctors directly. He arranged for Ruth's care through a private account he set up that same afternoon. He sat in the waiting room while tests were run, on his phone, working, present in the way people are present when they have decided something matters to them. Victoria stood beside her mother's bed afterward, holding her hand, unable to find words large enough for what had just happened. "God will bless you, my son," Ruth said to Connor. "Amen, Mama," he said simply, and smiled. Victoria looked at him across that small hospital room. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself that a third time and still did not believe it. "Can you stay for a while?" Connor said that evening, finding her in the hallway. "I just want someone to talk to tonight." She should have said no. Every reasonable part of her understood that she should say no. She stayed. And what happened that night, what neither of them planned or predicted, was going to have consequences that would follow them both for the rest of their lives. While Victoria and Connor sat together that night, talking quietly, until the hours disappeared, two women were sitting across town making a plan with Victoria's name on it. And it was already in motion. Margaret had seen enough. She called Amber that same evening. "I have a strong feeling that girl is the reason Connor has been behaving differently toward you," she said. "Then we get rid of her," Amber said immediately. "Chasing her away will not be enough," Margaret said. Her voice was very calm, the voice of someone who has already thought this through completely. "Chasing her away leaves room for Connor to go after her. We need something that makes him turn away from her himself. Something permanent. Something he cannot come back from." Amber was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think I know exactly what you mean." "Come over tomorrow evening," Margaret said. "There is something important I want to discuss with you." The plan was simple in the way that cruel things often are. Victoria's evening glass of juice left on the kitchen counter while she went to set the dining table. Margaret alone in the kitchen for less than 2 minutes. A small addition to the glass that would make Victoria unable to account for the next several hours of her life. Thomas the gateman would be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And when Victoria woke up in a room that was not hers, Connor would be the first person through the door. It was designed to be unrecoverable. It almost was. Victoria had no idea what was in that glass. She drank it without thinking. And the next thing she remembered was waking up to the worst moment of her life. She woke up in a room that was not hers. Confused, dizzy, reaching for the last thing she could remember, and Finding nothing there, Margaret arrived first, then Amber, then Connor, drawn by the noise, his face moving through confusion toward something that looked like devastation. "Victoria," he said, "what is this?" "I do not know how I got here," she said. Her voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "I swear to you, I do not know what happened. Something was wrong. Something was in my drink. I blacked out and—" She stopped. She looked at his face, and she saw it. He wanted to believe her. She could see that clearly. But the room had been arranged so perfectly, every detail so carefully placed, that believing her required him to disbelieve his own eyes. "I am disappointed," he said quietly. Those 4 words landed in her chest like something permanent. Victoria lifted her chin. "If you do not believe me," she said, "then there is nothing more I can say." She walked out. Margaret watched her go, and in the expression on Margaret Harrington's face there was something that looked almost like satisfaction. Almost. Because what Margaret did not know, what she could not have accounted for, was that one person in that house had seen everything, and he was not going to stay quiet forever. Victoria was gone. The plan had worked exactly as designed. But the one thing that Margaret and Amber forgot to consider was that guilt is heavier than money, and the man they paid to stay quiet was already starting to crack. Victoria went home. She sat on the edge of her mother's bed and cried without explaining why, and Ruth held her, without asking, because mothers understand things that have no words. "I did not do it, Mama," Victoria said finally. "I promise you I did not do it." "I know my daughter," Ruth said. "And one thing I know for certain, the truth always finds its way out." Victoria wiped her eyes. She did not believe her mother yet, but she held on to the words anyway. 6 weeks later, she found a small retail space on the east side of the city. She negotiated the lease herself, stocked the shelves herself, painted the walls herself, opened the door on a Tuesday morning with $15 left in her wallet and a prayer said quietly. Before the first customer walked in, she did not contact Connor. She did not look back. And then one morning she went to the doctor for a routine checkup and sat in a chair in a small, white room and heard a single word that rearranged everything she thought she understood about her situation. "Congratulations," the doctor said. Victoria drove home in complete silence. She sat across from her mother and said the thing she had been afraid to say out loud. "It is Connor's mama." Ruth was quiet for a long moment. "He needs to know," she said finally. "Mama, I do not think he will believe me. Not after everything. My concern," Ruth said carefully, "is not whether he believes you. My concern is that you are not alone in this." Victoria looked at her hands. She had no idea that at that exact moment on the other side of the city, the truth was already walking toward a door. It was about to knock on. Thomas had not slept a full night in 8 weeks. Every morning he woke up and told himself today was not the day. But tonight was different. Tonight he picked up his hat and walked to the Harrington house. And what he was about to say in that study was going to bring the entire carefully constructed lie crashing down. Connor was in the study when the knock came. He had not been sleeping well. He had thrown himself into work with the focused desperation of someone trying to outrun a thought that keeps catching up. The engagement had been formalized. The date had been set. His mother was pleased. His father was satisfied. Connor told himself this was fine. He was not sleeping. The knock came at 9:30. Thomas stood in the doorway, with his hat in both hands and the particular stillness of a man who has made a decision he cannot unmake. "Sir," he said, "I cannot carry this anymore. My conscience has not given me a single day of rest." Connor looked at him for a long moment. "Sit down, Thomas," he said. Thomas sat, and then he said everything, every detail, every instruction Margaret had given him, every dollar he had been paid to stay in that room and say nothing. The juice, the timing, the way it had all been arranged to look exactly like what it was not. Connor listened without moving. When Thomas finished, the room was completely silent. Connor stood up slowly. He walked to the living room where his mother was sitting with a book in her lap. "Did you tell me the whole truth," he said, "about what happened to Victoria?" Margaret looked up, and in the half-second before she answered, Connor saw it, the small involuntary flinch of someone who has been waiting for this question and hoped it would never arrive. Yes, she said, I did it for this family. We could not afford to lose the business arrangement. I could not let a housekeeper come between you and everything we had built. Connor looked at his mother for a long moment. Then you never knew me at all, he said quietly. I am calling off the engagement. He walked out. His father's voice followed him down the hallway. His mother called his name twice. He did not stop. He had the truth. He had called off the engagement. He had walked out of the house that had shaped his entire life. But Victoria had disappeared, and finding her was going to be harder than he expected, because she had made absolutely sure of that. It took him 2 days and a canceled engagement and a conversation with a woman named Becky who looked at him for a long, careful moment before deciding he deserved to know where Victoria was. The neighborhood was quiet when they arrived. He walked up the front path of the pale blue house on the east side of the city. He knocked. The door opened. Victoria stood in the doorway and looked at him. And then he saw it, the unmistakable truth written clearly in front of him. And the breath left his body completely. Victoria, he said, you are pregnant. You found me, she said. What do you want, Connor? I know what happened, he said. I know everything. Thomas told me, and my mother confirmed it. I should have listened to you. I should have believed you when you told me the truth. I am sorry, Victoria. I am more sorry than I know how to say out loud. She looked at him for a long time. You hurt me, she said. You have no idea what I went through these past months. I know, he said, and I am not asking you to forget that. I am just asking you to let me try to make it right. The silence between them lasted a long time. And then Victoria stepped back from the door. Come in, she said. 3 months later, Ruth's surgery had gone well. The shop Victoria had built from $15 and a prayer was turning a profit. Connor had ended the business arrangement that had cost everyone so much and was building something new, something that did not require anyone to be sacrificed for it. Margaret came to Victoria on a Sunday afternoon. She sat across from her in the small living room of the pale blue house and said the things she should have said months ago, plainly, without excuses, without asking for anything in return. I was wrong about you, she said. I treated you as if you did not matter. You did. You do. I am sorry. Victoria looked at her for a long moment. I have already forgiven you, she said. We all make mistakes. What matters is that we learn from them. Margaret nodded. Something in her face shifted into something quieter and more honest than anything Victoria had seen there before. Connor planned the evening carefully. The restaurant Victoria had mentioned once in passing, a detail she did not realize he had kept. Ruth at the table, Becky across from her already laughing at something. Warm golden light, the smell of good food, the feeling of a room full of people who were exactly where they were supposed to be. Victoria was wearing the dress Connor had left at her door that morning with a note that said only, tonight. She looked beautiful in the way people look beautiful when they are finally somewhere they belong. Connor waited until the table went quiet in that particular way tables go quiet when something is about to happen. He looked at her. You came into my life, he said, at a time when I had stopped paying attention to what actually mattered. You were honest when everything around me was arranged. You were kind when nobody was asking you to be. You kept going when I gave you every reason to stop. He reached into his jacket pocket. Victoria James, he said, will you marry me? The table went completely silent. Victoria looked at the ring, then at Connor, then at her mother, whose eyes had gone bright with everything she was feeling and not saying. Then she looked back at him. Yes, she said. The restaurant erupted. Ruth pressed both hands to her heart and looked upward. Becky knocked over her water glass and absolutely did not care. And Connor slid the ring onto Victoria's finger in a room full of noise and light and held her hand and did not let go. There is a particular kind of strength that does not announce itself. It shows up before sunrise and stays after dark. It builds small things into larger things when nobody is watching. It forgives not because the hurt was small, but because carrying it would cost too much. Victoria James had that kind of strength. And in the end, not because the world suddenly became fair, but because the truth is patient and stubborn and always finds its way out. She received everything she deserved. Every single thing. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe and come back next week. We have more stories just like this one waiting for you every single week.